Hello and welcome back to Caring for the Caregiver. Today I'm bringing you content from the second class. I hope that you found the first recorded lecture helpful. We reviewed the goals and overview of this 6-week class and went over the key concepts, which is this class brings or teaches cognitive behavioral therapy skills along with mindfulness meditation, and brings together a group of individuals going through a shared experience with the goal of improving caregiver well-being and self-care, enhancing self-care while caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or another form of dementia. Last week, after a review of the course, we talked about the difference between, we talked about memory loss and different causes of dementia. Alzheimer's disease being the most common cause in the United States, but certainly there are other diseases in the brain that cause dementia. After our lecture on brain aging and memory, we practiced a signal breath and went over a mood tracker to get you thinking about how to evaluate your mood over the course of a day, as well as to stop and practice breathing in order to bring you into the present moment when you're feeling stressed. In today's lecture, we're going to talk about our thoughts, becoming aware of our thoughts. This is coming from cognitive behavioral therapy literature, and oftentimes many of us are not aware of the thoughts that we're having. And so the goal of this lecture is to help you identify thoughts, unhelpful thoughts in particular, and learning how to notice the connection between thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and learning how to replace our thoughts, our negative thoughts, for more positive thoughts that will theoretically lead us to feeling better and potentially choosing healthier behaviors. When people feel stressed, they're often so overwhelmed that they don't notice the thoughts that they're having. These thoughts can make people feel even worse. So how we think and feel affects our behavior. You see this triangle here, the cognitive triangle, that represents thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And what the pictorial is trying to show us is that our thoughts do affect the way we behave and the way we feel. And in turn, our behaviors affect our thoughts and our emotions. And our emotions also affect our thoughts and behaviors. So we're not able to change our feelings. If we could, we'd all be better off if we can just decide to feel better or feel differently, but we can't. But we do have control over our behaviors and our thoughts. So in a later lecture, we're going to talk about behavioral change. But today, for the purpose of today's lecture, we're going to focus on paying attention to our thoughts and catching our automatic thoughts and then replacing them with more helpful thoughts. And in turn, this will affect our mood and our behaviors. So I would like to start by distinguishing the difference between a thought and a feeling. The examples on this slide are pretty straightforward, but sometimes people do have a difficulty distinguishing the difference between a thought or a feeling. So for the purposes of this exercise, I am a bad caregiver. Just take a second and jot down whether that statement is a thought or a feeling. I don't know what I'm doing. Thought or feeling. I feel so guilty. Thought or feeling. So here, the word feel is in the statement. I feel so guilty is a feeling. But, I don't know what I'm doing. That could be a feeling or a thought, right? You feel like you don't know what you're doing. Also, the thought is that you don't know what you're doing. And that thought, I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm a bad caregiver. How does it make you feel when those thoughts are running through your mind? Not so good. But that's often the thought that people walk around filling their heads with all the time. So imagine if you were listening to music through headphones. If the headphones fit over your ears correctly, they're secure on your head, they're plugged in, the music comes in clearly. But if the headphones are broken or not fully plugged in, or they're not being used properly, you may mishear or misinterpret the music. And the same is true for the way we interpret situations around us and the conversations we have with others. Our interpretations of these events happen through our own personal headphones, if you will, or a set of thoughts that help us make sense of the world. When we're stressed or frustrated, our headphones are turned to a negative signal that interprets situations in a negative way. As you begin to identify and examine the unhelpful thoughts you have, you may start to notice patterns, both in the type of thoughts you have, as well as in the situations that tend to be more difficult for you. We may even go so far as to say that you have a particular manner of style to the way you interpret stressful situations. This slide contains a list of negative thought patterns or cognitive distortions that are common among caregivers. The first one is name calling. This is attaching a blanket negative label to yourself or to others. For example, I'm a bad caregiver. My husband's an idiot. Usually it's a negative name that you place on a person or a thing. The next common style of thinking is tyranny of the shoulds. This refers to the rules that you have about the way things should be. They're often unrealistic expectations that result in strong feelings of guilty anxiety when not met. For example, I should have a clean house before I can do anything for myself. Or a good caregiver would keep their spouse at home for the duration of their illness. There's a kind of common joke that goes along with this, and which is don't should on yourself. It's not really helpful to live in the tyranny of the shoulds. Next, we have this or that. This refers to viewing the situation only in terms of extreme outcomes. You see your choice of outcomes as either or with no room for the options that fall in the middle. For example, I'm either a total success or I'm a total failure. People who think this way tend to overuse words like always and never. I'm always in a bad mood. I'm never happy, right? Personalization. This is when you assume that others have negative intentions towards you or negative views of you. So an example is if a friend cancels a coffee date, you assume she's doing so because she no longer likes you. Next is generalization. People who generalize often overinterpret situations. They draw conclusions based on very few to no facts. For example, if the person for whom you're caring is moody in the morning, you immediately interpret that it will be a bad day. Next, if only. People who tend to be in the if only style of thinking spend a lot of time thinking of past events, wishing things had been done differently. Some people tend to take this a step further and engage in magical thinking. For example, if I hadn't bragged about what a great marriage I had, my husband wouldn't have gotten sick. Or if only we had, not retired so early, this wouldn't be happening to us. Next is what's the use? This pattern of thinking is common for people who believe that their thoughts or behaviors are not effective in changing their situation, and this leads to feelings of hopelessness. For example, whenever I plan an outing for myself, it never goes as planned, so why bother trying it all? What's the use? Okay, and then emotional reasoning is when we use our feelings as the basis for facts of a situation. So this, feelings are just that. Feelings are feelings. They are not based in fact, but people often will engage in this kind of thinking. And an example of this would be, I'm angry with my husband, and so therefore I'm a bad wife. But you can be angry with your husband and not be a bad wife, right? And then finally, we have fallacy of change. You expect that one specific change that is often maybe not even realistic will make everything better. So for example, if I could just get my husband to admit he has dementia, I wouldn't be having such a hard time. Okay. So those are some common styles of thinking, and I'd like you to maybe take a minute and take out your journal and write down some examples of, or write down some of these that identify your own styles of thinking, and really think about, what's common for you. Jot that down and write some examples of why you identify yourself as having a particular style of thinking. Okay, so by now you have hopefully a better sense of some of the unhelpful patterns of thinking that you engage in from time to time. And you can choose these generally or specific to your caregiving role. And now we're going to do a case example. So David is caring for his wife, Molly, who has Alzheimer's disease. He recently retired and is now a full-time caregiver. One day, David needs to go to the mall to run an errand, and he decides to take Molly with him. However, once he gets there, he realizes he needs to use the bathroom. He sits Molly down on a bench outside the bathroom and says, "Please just sit here for a few minutes. I'll be right back." When he returns, however, Molly is missing. David is anxious and scared and runs up and down the length of the mall looking for her. After a few minutes, he finds her in a shoe store chatting with a salesperson and trying on shoes. After his initial relief, David thinks, why won't Molly listen to me? I'm trying the best I can, and she won't even acknowledge how hard this is for me. In fact, she's actively working against me. Now everyone in the mall knows I'm not a dependable caregiver. I guess this is the end of our public outings together. David then feels angry, frustrated, embarrassed, and trapped. Okay, so we're going to use that example of Molly and David, and we're going to take stock of helpful thoughts. So the way we do this is in this is called a thought record. I'm going to teach you a 3-column thought record. We have 3 steps: A, B, and C. So step A is taking note of the situation and what happened prior to the thought. Okay, so in David and Molly's case, I'll show you David's thought record in just a minute. Okay, so just to lay out the framework, A is what happened before the thought. B is identifying the automatic thoughts that happen in the situation. And then C is identifying the feelings after the moment, after the thought. So a couple of things to note. You don't want to assign any judgment to these. We're going to be very objective about what happened, what the thought was, and what the feeling was. We're going to use this as simply as data. We're not making changes in your mood without correctly identifying what you want to change. Okay, so right now we're just collecting data. And then we'll organize these 3 items into a chart called a thought record. And on the next slide, I'm going to show you an example of David's thought record. Okay, so here's David's thought record. The situation is that Molly, I don't know if she got lost, but he thought she got lost, right? After he told her to stay put while he went to the restroom. And after his initial relief, once he found her, these were his automatic thoughts. She refuses to listen to me. She doesn't appreciate all I'm doing. I'm not a dependable caregiver, and now everyone knows it. And I can never take her anywhere again. Okay, so those are his thoughts. And the outcome is that he ends up feeling angry, frustrated, scared, embarrassed, and stuck. Now I'd like you to take a minute, maybe pause this recording, get out your journal, or you can use this thought record. There's one in the printout that for the class binder notes. So either in your journal or in the class printout, or you can just create a new one in your computer that you save to a folder. I want you to think about a different difficult caregiving situation that you have encountered in the past couple of weeks. And then complete the following thought record. What happened, what your thoughts were, and how it made you feel. So just pause and take the time to come up with one or two situations that you want to document here. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to think about something that happened recently in your life, and just pure data collection. You recorded what happened, your thoughts, and your feelings about it. We're going to revisit it later. But first, before we do that, we're going to look at techniques for challenging and replacing unhelpful thoughts. So the more you practice challenging your thoughts, the easier it will become. Here are some techniques to try. And we're going to use Molly and David's example before we jump into your example. I just want to really underscore that I'm going to be having you use a lot of these records and trackers, but the goal is not to, not to be so scientific about it, or not to overburden you with all this homework, but really to get you to do these, to notice your thoughts and find ways to replace them that are more helpful to you more quickly. So we're going to use trackers to practice, and then with the goal of you being able to do it just kind of much more quickly than normally. Okay, so one way to challenge and replace an unhelpful thought is to look at it from a different point of view. Talk to yourself as someone who cares about you is talking to you, like maybe your friend. David might ask himself, how would my best friend James view this situation, and what would he say? Okay, so think about someone else and what they'd tell you. Take action. Ask others. Some caregivers find it helpful to gather more information to challenge their unhelpful thoughts. In David's example, he could challenge his thought about not being a dependable caregiver by talking to other caregivers he knows. Could David also ask them how they handled using the bathroom when out with their relative? I bet if he did, he'd find out that others are actually experiencing the same thing. And that's just like one of these realities of caring for someone with dementia. And it doesn't, and because it wasn't perfect, it doesn't mean that he's a bad caregiver. Okay. Also, we want to change the way we talk to ourselves. We often create negative labels for others or ourselves without realizing what we're doing. We also may believe that we must behave, think, or feel a certain way. So changing the negative to the positive or harshness to companion can help you see a situation from a different point of view. If David tried to think about what his label of not being a dependable caregiver really meant, he would discover that he could not possibly fit that definition. Okay, number 4 is don't jump to conclusions. Remind yourself to think of different possible explanations for others' behavior. You may be basing your predictions on very little information. Should David automatically assume that because the stranger in the mall asked how he was doing, she must be passing judgment on his ability as a caregiver? What could have been her other motives? Okay, number 5, consider alternatives and in-betweens. When people think of the only extreme outcome of situations, scores of alternatives get ignored. So imagine a ruler that has a 0 at one end and 12 inches at the other. There are lots of inches marked in between. So can David really never take Molly out of the house again? Or can he test out smaller, different outings where the stakes might be lower? Okay. Number 6 is using a scale technique. This technique works well when you're stuck on a particular thought or feeling and want to weigh the advantages and disadvantages of maintaining the thought or emotion or behavior. So what are the advantages of David's belief that he can never take Molly to the mall again? And what are the disadvantages? So one advantage might be that this style of thinking is comfortable. He likes to think in these all or nevers, and he doesn't have to challenge himself. A disadvantage might be that he feels stuck and socially isolated, hopeless, and angry. Okay, so next we have credit positives. So focusing on stress and frustration is a constant pull for negative interpretations that prevent us from remembering that positive events, thoughts, and feelings do occur. Spend a few minutes thinking of some pleasant outcomes of events, positive thoughts you've had, and positive emotional consequences that result from positive thoughts. So for example, David might think, wow, that was really scary, but I managed to rectify the situation and everyone's safe. Now I know what to expect in the future. Or he might think, I haven't seen Molly engage with a stranger like that in forever. It was really nice to see her interested in something and chatting with someone. Okay, so he could look at that situation from a positive perspective. All right, so thought stopping and substitution is number 8 on this list for challenging and replacing unhelpful thoughts. This technique is helpful for people who find it hard to extinguish a particular negative thought. So when you find yourself repeating the thought over and over, which we all do, we all ruminate a lot, try saying out loud to yourself, stop. Replace it with positive self-talk. So later that night, David might be lying in bed thinking about what happened on an endless loop. I'm a bad caregiver. That was a close call. I can't take her out anymore. And he can just stop himself, say stop. I'm putting in a lot of effort into learning how to do this, and I'm proud of myself for what I am doing and that I am working to improve. Okay, so that is stopping a negative thought abruptly in its tracks and replacing it with a more positive thought. All right, number 9 on this list is a controversial one called worry time. So it's controversial because so sometimes people just need to worry to get a thought out of their system. Some people are just prone to worrying. So when we schedule worry time, we schedule a time during the day to focus on our worrying. So when worries come up at other times, so we don't want people to get stuck in this worry. If you are a worrier, maybe use your journal to jot down some of the things that you're worrying about, just to get them on paper and out of your mind. And then and set aside a time, like maybe at 4 o'clock this afternoon is going to be your worry time, from 4 to 4:15. Set a timer for 15 minutes and do all of your worrying about the things that you have on your list or on your mind until the timer goes off. And then, close the journal and be done with your worrying, move on to something else. I say it's controversial because I don't want to advocate getting stuck in the worry time. It requires some discipline on your part to pay attention to that timer and know when to stop. Okay, so now you have some tools for challenging and replacing negative thoughts. And with these tools, we're going to expand our 3-column thought record to a 6-column thought record. We're going to add, we have steps A, what happened, B is the thought, C is the way it made you feel, Now we're going to add D, which is challenging and replacing the unhelpful thought in column B. Okay, so we're going to replace it with something more helpful. And then in column E, we're going to see if our feelings changed. It may change, it may not have changed, but we're going to take, kind of take stock and see if the new way of thinking about the situation results in a more positive feeling. And then column F is going to be our functional behavior. How might our behavior be different now that we were able to replace our unhelpful thought and we feel better? Maybe we might do something differently next time. And on the next slide, we're going to take a look at David's 6-column thought record. Okay, so David was thinking of himself as a bad caregiver. He can never go on an outing with his wife again. That was in the 3-column thought record, and now we're going to challenge and replace. So now in his D column, he can say, I've never done this before. How could I have anticipated this? Next time, I'll be more prepared. He might say, this has happened to other caregivers in my support group. I hear this all the time, and it doesn't make them or me a bad caregiver. He can also tell himself that actually Molly probably isn't actively working against her. She just couldn't remember that he asked her to stay put. It's not her fault. And then finally, he can tell himself that the other people in the mall looking at him were probably just concerned for him and not judging him, actually. So when he's able to be clear-headed and get out of his negative thought patterns and try to think of it from a different perspective, then he might feel differently. So in his E column, we might see David feeling less frustrated, less angry at Molly, but still angry, but at the disease. A little bit more helpful and proud of himself. But he also might feel sad. So I point this out by way of saying that this isn't a solution to eradicating negative thoughts, because sadness is a negative emotion, or I should say negative emotion. Sadness is a negative emotion. No one really likes feeling sad, but sometimes when you let go of anger, what's underneath that anger is sadness. And so that could be a realistic change in emotion when debating thoughts. And then finally, in our F column, this might be how David's behavior will change in the future. So maybe he'll think, next time I'll find a family restroom where I can keep an eye on Molly, or I'll bring someone else. I'll bring my nephew to the mall with us so that Molly's not alone if I have to use the restroom. He might make another decision to not go to the mall. If he can't find someone else to go with her or with them, he can think of other outings for them. And then he can also, knowing that Molly likes shoes, he can think of another activity that involves shoes, like take her shoe shopping or something. But so kind of identifying an activity that Molly is interested in and making different choices about what they'll do together. Okay. So in just a minute, I'm going to ask you to bring out your thought record from the situation that you recently had, and we're going to add 3 more columns to it. Okay, so please reference the 3-column thought record that you recently completed, and you can either find this 6-column thought record in the handouts that we gave you on our website, or you can just create one in your journal and add 3 more columns. So we have your situation, your thoughts about it, the way it made you feel. And now I'd like you to pause this recording and find other ways of thinking about the situation that are more helpful to your emotional well-being. Write those down in column D, and then jot down how you think they might make you feel, how they might change your emotional state, and then how you might approach a situation differently in the future, your behavioral change. So just go ahead and pause this recording and spend a few minutes completing your 6-column thought record specific to your situation. And I want to invite you to bring this to your office hours to share with the facilitator if you would like to, and with others who might be in the office hour call. So thank you for completing your 6-column thought record. We welcome that in office hours if you choose to bring it. We're going to shift gears a little bit now and look at how the things we do, how the activities in our lives can affect our mood. And this will play into the mood tracker that will be for your homework. And so just kind of keep in mind how our behaviors, which is, how our life behaviors are, how our life activities are behaviors and how they affect our mood. So all of our lives are made up of both pleasant and unpleasant activities. And these activities control how up or down we feel, how good or bad we feel. So for example, you might spend the morning having coffee with a friend, but then come home to chores around the house and having to pay your bills. Unfortunately, many aspects of caregiving can be unpleasant and not within our control. So we can't really change that, but what we can change is our choices. We can decide to incorporate more pleasant activities to counterbalance the other things that we have to do in order to reintroduce a sense of control and mastery. So we realize the realities. We realize that caregivers struggle with this because of, a lack of time or money. Respite care. Respite is having someone to come over and give you a break when your person can't be home alone. Often we're lacking emotional supports and control over the person with dementia's symptoms or their disease progression. PWD, you might see that in some of my slides, and that stands for person with dementia. And so when caregivers are not engaging in pleasant activities because of these barriers, it can turn into burnout, frustration, anger, a loss of identity. So, I want you to really remember that self-care is not easy and it doesn't come naturally for many people. Self-care is a skill and it takes practice. It might take a while to develop the habit of incorporating pleasant activities or self-care activities into your daily life, but we think it's important and want to spend some time talking about how to do that. So pleasant activities don't have to be big blowout events that require a lot of planning. They can be small things you do on your own with your friends or with the person you're caring for. Some examples are reading, going for a walk, or even listening to music. And even though these activities may only last 15 minutes, taking the time out for yourself is really important for your well-being. And I think, I'll just tell you, for me personally, the pandemic this year has really kind of redefined the way I think about pleasant activities. I used to think going on a vacation, I live for vacations and travel. Couldn't do that during the pandemic. So literally getting out for a 30-minute walk each day became my new normal for pleasant activities. Working out, doing yoga on a YouTube video. All of these things are activities that I need to consciously choose and do deliberately. So that's one of the key criteria for a pleasant activity. It's something that we do consciously and deliberately. We can stumble upon something, but that's not something that we built into our schedule. So, even activities like chores can be turned into pleasant activities if you take to the task with a calm attitude and look for enjoyable features of them. So an example here is listening to a favorite podcast while you do the dishes. And for some reason, when I was teaching this class in the very beginning, maybe 2011, when I started teaching it, somebody at one of these classes said that one of her pleasant activities for the week was scrubbing out her toothbrush holder. And, she said that never before did she think of scrubbing out the toothbrush holder as being a pleasant activity, but she approached it with a calm attitude. And then she really took she experienced a sense of accomplishment when she saw the outcome of her work, and it made her feel really good. So those are some examples of how to choose everyday activities into something pleasant. Using your senses also. So for example, making a pot of coffee and just taking a minute to really smell the coffee and being very mindful about what's around you. That can turn an everyday chore into a pleasant activity. And then also taking time to enjoy yourself. This will help you feel less stressed and to actually be a better caregiver. So just, enjoy being with yourself and doing things for yourself and engaging in self-care. And our mantra here is going to be that 4 pleasant activities a day keep the doctor away. So we're going to aim for 4 pleasant activities a day throughout your duration of the 6 weeks in this course. For some of you, identifying pleasant activities will come easily and naturally. For others of you, it'll be a bit more of a challenge. So I just want to identify some guidelines for you. So first, I want to ask you to start small and be simple. I want you to choose activities that you can do every day or at least a few times a week. An example of this for me personally is that I like to light a scented candle in the evenings while I'm, doing stuff around the house or, whatever I'm doing. I just kind of put that on. It creates a little sense of ambiance and a nice scent. And I can do that every day. And it actually does improve my mood. You want to choose activities that you can do anywhere and that don't require a lot of planning. So you can listen to your favorite album or call a friend from most places. If you're on a walk, you might call a friend, you might listen to a podcast. So that's an example of an activity that can be done anywhere. And I want you to think about how to adapt activities that are too involved. So I used the example of traveling earlier. We can't even really travel much at all anymore, but certainly even in non-pandemic times, we can't take a trip every day or every month. So instead, maybe consider walking around a new neighborhood, or even planning a future day trip, or even planning a future fantasy trip. I read somewhere once that people report more enjoyment out of planning a vacation than the actual vacation. So I that kind of resonated with me. I mean, vacations are great, but the fantasy, the planning of it can be so much more rewarding. So that would be another activity that you could do in times when you cannot travel. And then finally, I'm going to ask you to choose activities that you can increase, something that you can do a little more of, because it feels really good to track progress and see the needle move in the positive direction. Okay. In case you are stuck and could benefit from some examples, here are some that we came up with for you. Take a long, hot bath or shower. Set a timer on your phone while you read a book, the newspaper, or a magazine. So just, put your phone away and maybe say, so this is kind of what I'm talking about, increase. Like today, I'm going to read for 15 minutes. Tomorrow, I'm going to read for a half hour. And on Saturday, I'm going to read for a whole hour. Set your timer or just get lost in the book. But this way, at least you're able to track progress. Another example is do an exercise class. Or a YouTube video of a yoga class or something like that. You could take a mindful walk. And by mindful walk, I mean, again, bringing your senses to the walk rather than just going from point A to point B. When you're taking a mindful walk, you're really focusing on everything you see. You're paying attention to the colors that you notice on the trees. or the flowers in the spring, or the turning leaves in the fall. You are you're using your sense of hearing. You want to listen to all the sounds that you hear when you're on your walk. You want to incorporate all the smells. So really just kind of focus on everything you see, hear, smell, feel. You might want to touch leaves or whatever on your walk. And that's what I mean by a mindful walk, bringing your senses on the walk with you and really engaging. Visit a museum. I think museums are open now, so if you feel comfortable going to a museum, fabulous. Otherwise, there are lots of museum tours online right now. Taking a few minutes to stretch or meditate, treating yourself to a cup of coffee or takeout meals some night if you don't want to cook. Many people find pleasure in gardening, or just simply unplugging and watching your favorite TV show or movie. So there's just some examples for you. And again, I'm going to ask you to pause this recording and just take a few minutes to write down 10 pleasant activities that meet the criteria that we discussed, things that you can choose to do, activities that are small and simple that you can increase or do more of, that can be done anywhere. So you can just review the criteria if you need to and jot down 10 pleasant activities that you can realistically do. And then I'm going to ask you to do 4 of these activities this week. So keep that in mind as well. So go ahead and pause and jot some things down. Okay, now that you have a sense of the pleasant activities that you plan to engage in this week, we're going to move on to a mindful relaxation exercise. But I do want to ask you to try to take a stab at doing 4 pleasant activities this week. And then also bring your list of your activity list to our office hours, to whichever office hour you signed up for, if you'd like to share with others. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is just walk you through an exercise called the 20 breaths. So you can maybe sit back in your chair in a comfortable position, and I'm going to read the instructions to you, and you can start to practice with me on this recording. So the 20 breaths practice helps you to create a powerful moment of stillness and silence in the middle of activity and stress. The 20 breaths exercise requires practice, and it rewards persistence. If you stay with it, and especially when you practice, even if you think you're too busy or distracted, you're guaranteed to learn from it. You'll discover for yourself that your own natural resources are never further away than your next breath. So here are some suggestions that'll help make this practice work for you. So first, when you start this activity, I want you to come to a full stop at the beginning. Deliberately stop everything else that you're doing. This practice only lasts a few minutes, so give it your full attention. If you don't, it'll be over before you really start. So you want to carve out 3 minutes of time in your day to be intentional about practicing the 20 breaths. And then I want you to, when you are doing the exercise, focus on one breath at a time. In reality, this practice consists of 20 very short moments of mindfulness. Each session only lasts for the duration of one breath, about 5 or 10 seconds. Every breath is different. Each one is short enough for you to devote yourself to it fully. Don't worry about what happened during the last breath or what will come next. See if you can bring your full attention to the breath that is alive right now. You will notice, of course, that your mind wanders into the past or into the future. Not a problem. This is how you learn about practicing mindfulness. Just don't wander away completely with your thoughts. Notice when they're wandering and gently return to your breath, to the moment of breath that is here with you right now. If you completely miss a breath or 10, don't worry, another one is just about to begin. I want to see if you can bring your full attention to the present moment of breath. You are bringing your full awareness to meet the breath. Each time you notice that some of your attention is elsewhere, see if you can bring that part of the attention back to meet the next breath. Notice distractions. Don't fight with them. But once you notice them, you'll have the opportunity to undo them in the next moment. Distractions are opportunities. Once we notice them, they'll show us how to return to the present moment. Take a fresh start when the next breath begins. This breath is new, never before experienced. Catch it while it's fresh, right at the moment when it arises. See if you can find that moment, the exact spot where the present is found. We talked about this before. The only moment that exists is this moment right now, and that is found in your breath. So rest for at least a few moments at the end of the practice. So I'd like you to think about possibly scheduling each 20 breaths practice that you do to last for about 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes. During the last minute or two after you finish counting, sit and rest gently with the continuous flow of your breath. Pause for a minute after you open your eyes and sense your body and breath and notice the world around you. Remember, the present moment is the only moment in your life that you can ever actually know. View this practice as a way to rediscover the moments that join to build your life. So that's kind of the lay of the land for this exercise. This is my very favorite exercise. I do this exercise 3 times a day, once in the morning before work, once midday, like right around lunchtime, and then again when I'm transitioning away from my work and into my life, I sit again and I do another 20 breaths exercise. I also find this exercise really helpful when I wake up in the middle of the night and I find my mind wandering. So those are some examples in my life how I use it. And I want you just to sit in your chair, close your eyes, and count your breath, each one from 1 to 10, and then backwards from 9 to 0. Go ahead and pause the recording and practice your own 20 breaths exercise now for about 3 to 5 minutes, please. I hope you are feeling a little more refreshed after practicing a few minutes of the 20 breaths exercise. Perhaps you might jot down in your journal the way you felt about it. Maybe you liked it as much as I do. Maybe you didn't. But just jot down what your experience with practicing the 20 breaths was like. And next up is homework for the week. So every day this week, I'd like you to continue tracking your daily mood. And remember, we're jotting down an aggregate mood score for the course of the day and identifying 2 reasons why you think your mood why you get assigned that number to your mood. The next homework practice is your signal breath. I'd like you to do your signal breath once a day, and that is when you're just taking 3 to 5 deep inhalations through your nose and exhalations out your mouth, and rating your level of tension before and after your signal breath. Also, I want you to add a 20 breaths exercise at least once a day. If you want to do it more, that would be fabulous. Maybe you want to consider this a pleasant activity and you start with once a day, and then you can increase it up to 3 times a day or more if you'd like. And then finally, the last piece of homework for you this week is the 6-column thought record. All of these trackers are on our website under week 2 in homework. And, I didn't put on this homework assignment 4 pleasant activities a day, but I think I want to add it. And you can record your pleasant activities in your journal. Just kind of track what you're doing consciously and deliberately each day for your own self-care. Any questions, write me at felicia.greenfield@upenn.edu. And I hope to see you in office hours, whichever day you signed up for. Thanks very much and have a good day.